Good evening, all. Thanks, Iskander, for inviting me. Actually, is a little bit of a payback time. Info.nl was very courteous to the ministry in organizing one of the designing events for combining views on how to create a standardized API for all things concerning cars with competitors at the table. And that are just the little steps we're trying to make now to make MaaS available in the Netherlands. So what is MaaS? And that's the topic I'm presenting tonight. I'm trying to keep it on a high level because we can get lost in all the details because it's quite a messy bit of understanding. And my role for the ministry is I'm the strategic partner and also invited to think about how we should organize the information structure, so the IT infrastructure over all the initiatives that are currently building up in the market concerning everything mobile, and not mobile in the sense of telephone, but mobile in the sense of mobility. So, just a short introduction. MaaS. Anyone familiar with the concept of MaaS here? You are. You assumed it dead already, right? It's one of your quotes.
Definitely.
All right. MaaS, mobility as a service. Is it a good term? Is it the right term? I don't think so. But that's just my view. It has become a kind of buzzword for about 3 years now. So actually it's mobility on demand. MaaS is a creation which has been expelled by my former employer. Yes. Because it is not as a service, it is not just a platform or a software. It's a whole different ballgame. And we see that the on-demand economy is growing. The Airbnbs, the Ubers, the booking.coms, anything that is within reach, you want it now, you want to have it. What is MaaS for mobility? Far more an interaction with first and last mile solutions. Everybody's acquainted with getting from A to B either with public transport or with their own car. And now we say, hey, how can we interact that last piece, which is costing us a lot of time, which is really hard to find or to organize by oneself, and how can we see if we can interact in a different way? Well, then we have digitalisation, my tongue twister there. So what can it do for us? It can support a few trends which we see occurring in the market. One of those is we have a turn from ownership to accessibility. So you don't want to have the car anymore, but you want to have it at the right time and you want to have it accessible to you. Or the same for public transport, that's why public transport is there. But is it always there when you want it? The answer is no. What is MaaS all about? It's about relevant data for personal situations. Complications within MaaS, or at least how we are looking at it from a global standpoint, you want to have it multimodal. Everyone acquainted with the concept multimodal, so your bus, tram, train, everything, but not only your own bike, but also the public services, the shared assets, and all available services like taxi rides or contract transportation for people who are, for instance, disabled or want to have also part of the community. The other side is you want to have actually one account. You don't want to be obliged to switch from your NS app to your RET app to your personal Google Maps for getting your car planning. So you want it hassle-free and seamless. Those are actually the 4 points within the two major brackets which we want to support. The seamless experience within the program MaaS at the ministry, we have deduced or categorized 7 topics in which we demanded or are asking companies within the market to organize their IT or their experience for the customer. As you can read, it starts with personal planning and preferences. So is it cost-wise, time-wise, sustainable, healthy? Name it, maybe in the future we can have it. And the preferences, I don't want to walk for more than 300 yards, or I don't want to go cycling when it rains, things like that. Is it all possible? Yes, it is possible. Is it going to be there in real near future? We never know, because we see now that MaaS is taking a step forward, and with all digital things you never know really how fast this can become reality. Then for planning, we saw a really big problem there, because planning is easy if you do it single modality, but if you want to make it multimodality, then you have to create different algorithms or different matches between vehicles. So we are now working together with car sharing companies or taxi companies, with bike sharing operators, with public transport, to get them to organize their APIs and their data structures in such a way that planning over all those multimodal transportations can be far easier for a lot of people or a lot of companies to support their end users in their apps or in their digital experience. Booking, adjusting, well, they're mostly combined. Actually, the traveling, we are very familiar in Holland with the OV-kaart. Most people have it, but it was a great step forward, and now we see it that it is straining innovation a bit. So we have to innovate there as well. We have to create new possibilities whilst maintaining what is good. Support given and paying, all these 7 aspects you want to have within your seamless experience. So for who is MaaS a great opportunity? Any hands? Does it sound good? Do we want to have it tomorrow? When do we need it? Do we need it? Yeah. Yeah? All right. I think so too, but that's because I'm a freak on the subject, probably. No, we'll get there in the end, because there are a lot of things hopefully we can reach for a societal point of view, except for besides the individual aspect. So we already covered the multimodal part. Another problem is the level playing field. There are a lot of people who want to travel, and that's a great thing, but cities are getting really crowded. People want to move more, so there's an increase of kilometers traveled, and there's a decrease, or well, a constance of the availability. We're running out of road, we are running out of track. So how can we manage this in future? And on the other side, it should be a market open for all who want to exploit it, but within a certain space of, within a certain limit. I just discussed with Pascal, sitting over there, one of the bike-friendly people of the Netherlands. Yes, we want a lot of shared bikes for cities, but we don't want them hanging around everywhere, and we want it controlled, and we want it environmentally friendly. Thank you. So, how will we get there? We're trying to take little steps. We saw a really divided market with all different languages, with all different ingredients for deploying their services to the market. And we're trying to overcome that by joining them in creating a vocabulary which can cover all their questions, which can cover all their services, which can cover all their assets. And then we're trying to put that in a certain frame of mind, or within a certain grammar called syntaxis, And hence we create a language that can operate between all these different transport providers, MaaS service providers, governments, and so on. Then we come to the subject of governance, and I left that to the final chapter because there are a lot of people right now who think, hey, we want to own or control the thing called MaaS. So I said, let's keep that for the last, because we will first see what happens and then we'll act upon that. Okay. Digitalisation. What we're actually trying to do, if I'm trying to explain this to people who are really not IT-minded or up in the game of MaaS, and they say, hey, what's MaaS? I say, hey, we're trying to create a digital version of the physical reality. And why are we trying to do that, or how are we doing that? You don't want to use all different timetables anymore. You want to have real-time positioning data so you can actually address the assets that you need. You don't want to match services because you cannot combine certain services, but you want to create combining the access to assets. We want to reduce the idle time into what we call efficient usage of assets. This is all possible just by creating this different world, and we can create or have created wonderful algorithms which can constitute in combining these efforts. So what were the developments? I'm trying to try to get this off the map so I can answer a few of your questions. Developments we have made in the past months or in the past years, we are finally understanding a bit of the MaaS data space. And it wasn't as simple as we thought. There were different roles, different parts which have to be played by several players in the market, which we only described as being 3 or 4, and then already expanded to about 12 or 13. So that's what we're trying to find out now. Who is up for those roles? What are the obligations which come with those roles? Things like that. The creating of a common language is really up and running. Even within the 7 regional pilots, we have put forward a standard API for bike share and car share. So that's coming along nicely now, and we're still expanding on and iterating on that. We are actually ascribing the roles to certain players, and we are defining their obligations, and certainly keeping a fair mind of flexibility in that, because we are sure that we don't know what MaaS is going to be. So the insights, a similar customer journey for all modes. And I'll ask the question to you. Do you think that is possible? No, but could you think that your train journey is similar to your car journey? And to your bike journey?
Why would they don't need to be, right? They don't need to be.
They don't need to be.
I don't understand the question.
No, I don't.
All right. If you want to go from point A to B, there are certain steps which you go through. And that's what we call the customer journey in getting from A to B. Also, there are components where data has to come into a certain part of the journey. At the other moment, it could be an asset. At another moment, it could be a key or an entry level.
But we're talking about the customer journey, so we're talking about the experience of the person traveling, right?
Yes.
But the experience of riding a bike and sitting in a train is completely different.
Yeah.
So why should it be similar?
Well, and that's the nice thing.
Payment should be similar. So I think
Yep.
the overhead should be similar.
Yeah.
But I hate buses and I love trains, right?
All right.
What you mean is the bus ticket should be similar as a car ticket?
maybe
Yeah, sure.
when you choose to not take the bus, you
That's
take
it.
the bus.
That's it.
But this is what we created in the last couple of months. We saw that if you have a journey with a train or a bus or a car or a bike, it's quite similar in all the interactions that you have actually getting from A to B. In a certain instance you have to get a ticket, in another instance you have to get a key. So that's, and it could be all digital because you've got these cards which can open doors, and the same cards could open a number of other things. So these are the things that are actually happening and things that are developing. And that makes the whole flow through MaaS in the future far easier, but also from a design point of view or an IT point of view. So we started off by matching made easy, and we did it through combining three things which are similar for everything that we use in transportation or in mobility. That's actually the location of the asset, the availability of it, and its competences. And these should match with the trip you want to make, going from A to B within a number of time, and with certain competences you have. Like, for instance, you can have a driver license and you can use a car, or you don't and you can't. Or you're in a wheelchair and you have to have special transportation which can support that. Okay?
So wait. So that information, if you have a driver's license or not, is in the app.
No.
Or card. Or,
But it,
well, who knows this information?
Well, you do.
I do.
Yeah. And you have the right to disclose it to anyone you want to.
But if I want to drive a car,
Yeah.
I have to disclose if I have a driver's license or not.
Yeah. If you want to rent a car,
Yeah.
you have to have a driver's
What
license.
if
So
I
that's
have
my
a-
question.
Yeah.
So.
But if you rent a bike, they don't need to know if you have a driver's license.
What if I
Yeah, but
don't
it's
want
mine,
to drive
right?
a car, but I have a driver's license?
Excuse me?
Can I not also adjust it to my wishes and needs?
You can.
I don't, yeah, so should it not rather ask me, do you have a driver's license? It should ask me, what is your preferred mode of transport, or what?
Well, probably if I click on car, then it's going to ask me, do you have a driver's license?
Yeah.
so, but
Or
it-
this information should already be on my account.
Those are the things we are looking for now. Those are the insights we're creating now.
but this
So-
implies that it's only MaaS and not any vehicle you own yourself or any motor.
No, but it's also it could also be for your own transportation.
MaaS could also be for your own transportation.
Yes, surely.
Your own car, right?
So how does
Why?
the system know where? So it knows where my bike is.
You can, yes. You can let the system know where your bike is.
But why would the system need to know?
Because the system can then advise you to take your own bike or your own car.
Ah,
Sharing with your neighbors?
And they can also reflect on your usage. And they can also give you insight in what the actual cost of your car is per month,
right.
or per day, or per...
And who will give me that advice?
Well, that's the system, the black box. That's the good question. So who would you like to own the system?
Well, not just anybody.
Cool, that's a solid answer, I like that. Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
You're always referring or talking about we.
Yeah.
Define we. Who's behind the we?
Behind the we is a program, and it's called MaaS, Mobility as a Service.
I understand, but who's the initiator? Is this the government?
It's the government, yeah,
Okay.
yes.
So they control the information.
No. It's the government is actually communicating or reaching out to the market. How can we help you to create MaaS?
So is this is the ultimate goal actually to become a provider?
Not for the government as is.
No. I mean for travelers.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And that must be very much dependent on who is cooperating, like Uber and taxi services.
Yes, and that's why we are creating this similar language in which all these operators can communicate.
So how do you?
Uber's business model is very much dependent on wanting to monopolize the.
Yes, it is.
Okay. How do you deal with that?
We've got the GDPR dealing with that.
Okay.
And what's the GDPR?
That's the privacy legislation throughout Europe.
Right.
So when from a government point of view is MaaS successful? if it's there, and what makes it successful?
Well, it's a great question. I think you can address it in a few steps within time. MaaS would be successful if we could see cooperation starting up between different operators and MaaS service providers. That would be a first step. A step far further from that is when we really see that mobility is coming to a full grid and in full gridlock, that we can actually advise people to take different routes before they're going on their travels. So gridlock won't happen, so we can have everything still available for everyone.
But how would you know where people are traveling?
We don't need to know. The system knows.
I'm afraid of the system.
Yeah, are you? You should be. We are afraid of the system as well.
You are the system.
No, we are not the system.
Building the system.
No.
Infrastructure.
No, we're trying to accomplish a decentralized architecture, so all this information won't end up in one place.
Well, I think that, of course, the MaaS concept in the end is great, but
Yeah.
why would you want to combine it into one user interface? Because when you look at it internationally, it's great when you're in Amsterdam, Vienna, or London, and with one app you can order a taxi.
Yep.
But you are more looking at it from a Dutch perspective, or not?
Well, no, really not, actually, no. We are working together with the MaaS Alliance, and there are several companies and governments which are combining their efforts and knowledge within MaaS to create a bigger ecosystem. And that's one of we are trying to create a pan-European project, but really decentralized, so it's not one European system, but it's very much entailed to the user need. It's a user-centric system. And one of the great things is that if you would have this kind of platform or system without outside the European sphere, the GDPR would not be in place. And then you could have discussions about data ownership. So then the system would know everything. But within the GDPR, we can say, hey, it's your data. So do you want to share it? And what do you want to share? And why do you want to share it? And why not? Yes, please.
From a government perspective, well, if you're looking at, we're in a stage where we're innovating or rethinking our mobility system, our mobility solution for society. What would be, what's the opportunity for innovation that you think that we should not miss?
I think the biggest one is the last one I mentioned, that the data ownership is with the end user or the civilian, because that creates a whole different power sphere than if you leave all this information with the machine.
I feel that that may be also really an important requirement. I feel that there's really an opportunity to provide much more mobility to people than they have at the moment.
Well, I think the seamlessness. I think the fact that you don't have to think about where you're going. If you can just say, hey, I want to go from here to Vienna tomorrow. What are my best options? And actually, the machine or the service provider will know your preferences for. Hey, you can also go by train. You don't have to go by plane. Maybe you'd like to share a cab when you get there because there are 4 people going to the same hotel at the same moment or the same conference. These are efficiency solutions that we can provide if there is similar data, which you cannot provide if they're just systems, smaller systems who are just operating themselves.
Isn't that in GDPR an obstacle to this?
No, it isn't.
It's like I have to allow
data
to be shared,
yes,
but also like have the right to be forgotten and all the rest. So like the availability of data is then like.
But some data can be forgotten, other data can't. and that's a simple fact. If you take a taxi from here to the station, they actually have to make a certain a receipt for it. They can hand it to you, and your name is not on it, unless you want to. But they have to also describe this ride for the tax authorities. So you can choose to forget your data, but he has to maintain it without it being attributed to your person. So you're anonymous, but the taxi ride still isn't. So everyone is able to go through MaaS anonymously. But if you want to share, and you say, hey, I would like to share this ride with other people, they don't have to know who you are. You can just be there and be in the same sphere and just get in, not getting acquainted to one another.
I feel that we're getting caught up a little bit in the
Yeah, sorry.
right?
Yeah.
The side of another data solution, but I'm really curious about like where can we take this? Where can we take mobility and make it available to people to whom it might not be that available at the moment? How can we make it more available for everyday people? And is mobility is that a right of citizens to be mobile? And then how far does that right extend, and how can we use technology to provide that?
I think that is a very good statement, and I think that's exactly the point where we're at the moment. We need to get an insight on what our moral compass is. What would we like MaaS to do for us? And everyone has their certain ideas about it, and we have to get those together to see what it can really do. Because we are looking at social inclusion, we are looking at sustainability, we are looking at accessibility of cities. So we're creating different themes around the MaaS subject, but we are still finding out what it should be. And that's, if we're talking about the real future of mobility, this is the real situation where we're at. So please feel invited to bring your thoughts to the table, because we are looking to create an inclusive system. So what are the chances? Is there going to be a return of the commons? Anyone unfamiliar with commons? Yeah, okay. The GDPR we just mentioned, and the shift of power. And in the end, where we want to go is we want to add value to personal services. So you're not just traveling from A to B, but it's going to be your ride on your conditions within your preferences. And at the end, and there maybe is an answer to most of our questions, we want to create a shared knowledge center. So the biggest thing with data is actually that its biggest worth is that it creates knowledge, and knowledge is power. So what happens if we share this power? And we share this power with all those stakeholders who are involved. So it's not just a platform for a company, but it's a joint effort for a lot of stakeholders. So really ending up here, the goal for ministry is the user-centric data-driven policy making. And we're trying to get about there in few steps. We're organizing 7 regional pilots. The first one is to start here in Amsterdam, halfway 2019. And we're tackling different subjects with every pilot. So we're really keen on seeing that happen. And we're inviting all people to use these pilots and to get acquainted with MaaS, and also with the parties who can contribute to please contribute in getting us to realize this societal change. So thank you for your time. My future to end up sustainable, social, affordable, and limited without being confined. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ferdinand. So we had already some discussions. I don't know if there are some burning questions also now before we go to the next speaker.
Pascal.
No, I just want to add one thing, unless we want to define that. MaaS does not add to mobility. Mobility is independent of whatever app you make, whatever data thing you make. The cities make mobility, and the provinces make mobility, and the national government makes mobility. They create and they plan everything else. You use that in MaaS to sort of connect them in your mumbo jumbo to get everybody easier to the place where they go. But most people, at least in the Netherlands, they know where they go every day. They're creatures of habit. They go with the same train, and if it doesn't go to the next train, or this bus, or that bike, to where they want to go. And car, of course. Well, you know, it's my system. And the few people who really need to share a taxi because they all go to the same conference, well, you don't want to invest all this for that type of activity. So my question would be, who on earth would use MaaS?
I love this question. And I bet you, Pascal, because we go quite a way back, I think you will be one of the first who will be using it because you're so interested in the subject.
You must realize that I'm already retired and I might not make it.
Well, we'll see. But you're not that old.
I am.
How is MaaS different from Google Maps?
Google Maps is a planning solution with a beforehand set out journey. So you're already saying where you're going from A to B, and then you're choosing your modality. And MaaS is different in the sense that Google doesn't give you back what costs you make throughout a month. Google doesn't use your preferences like health or other things. You want a more intricate piece of technology which can help you to get your journey in the way you like it to. And it's centralized as well.
Final question?
Yep.
Oh, there are a lot of questions.
One final? Anyone?
She has a question.
I do have a question.
You do have a question.
Yeah, you explained how one of the goals of mobility as a service is to be multimodal and to have one user interface. And we've seen with Uber, for example, they've acquired jump bikes. So they want to have a kind of monopoly on all these different modes of transport to get you from A to B.
Yep.
So my question is the role of the government to provide economic incentives for companies like Uber so that they can make these acquisitions, or is it more of a regulatory role?
What would you suggest that we do in this instance?
I mean, I think it depends. With the data, I think it's definitely, it should play more of a regulatory role. With things like, maybe you don't want to provide economic incentives because once Uber has a monopoly on bikes and scooters and cars, obviously they can jack those prices, so it's not accessible anymore. So I'm just wondering what you see your role as in this mobility as a service environment.
What we're trying to accomplish is to get all the players around the table. And that starts with users, that starts with transport operators, with MaaS service providers who are now getting established. And why do we want to do that? Is to get them to decide on the game. And them being mostly European players, they're not set out to be like these giant economic world domination type of companies. They are set on doing the things they do best. They specialize, they want to work together, they want to have a happy business, but they know they need each other. And they're not monoliths who try to buy everything top down and try to govern or own your world. And the GDPR is very helpful in that instance.